So the next is a ring clasp, right? This ring clasp has a very, very specific indication. It is used to combat tipped molars. Now, if you have a case where a 6 or a 5 has been extracted and that space has not been restored for a long time, it is often common to see these molars tip inwards. Now, in the lower arch, it is usually a mesial lingual tipping, whereas in the maxillary arch, it is usually a mesial and buccal tipping. Now, if the tooth is tipped mesiolingually, the undercut is towards the lingual side, and if the tooth is tipped buccally, it is towards the buccal side, right? Now, since it is also a mesial tilt, it is not possible for me to employ normal clasps. So what I do is, if this such a tip is present, so in this case that you might see, there is a mesial and lingual tilt, right? You can see the red just under the proximal plate that signifies your mesial undercut, and shortly you will see the lingual undercut as well. The idea, right, is to choose a clasp system that will originate from the buccal side, right? So if you can see the rest, it originates from the buccal side, wraps around the distal of the tooth, and then engages the tooth on the lingual side near the undercut. In the upper, it is the exact thing, but the other way around. So you can see that here it is tracing around the buccal side, and you don't see any undercut there, right? Because the tooth is white. And it wraps around the distal and finally goes and approaches the lingual side where the undercut is present. So this is how a ring clasp works. In the upper, it is similar, but it approaches from the palatal side because the tilt is going to be towards the buccal. So it approaches from the palatal, wraps around the distal, and engages in the buccal undercut. Now, the back action clasp is a modified ring clasp in which the minor connector is connected near the clasp and the rest is suspended free. Here, the minor connector was attached to the proximal plate was attached to the rest, and from it, the clasp originated. Whereas in a back action or a modified ring clasp, the minor connector or the proximal plate is attached to near the clasp and the rest is suspended free from the uh, other parts of the cast partial. Okay. Next is a fish hook or a hairpin type in which in which the retentive arm snakes around to near the undercut and then curves back to engage the undercut. So if it is, for example, a condition in where the undercut is present near the edentulous zone, as in this case, but then I'm not able to employ a reverse circular clasp to come from the dentulous side, I can originate the clasp from near the undercut zone, but then come back to engage the undercut. So it's like a hairpin, no, or a fish hook, which they use for fishing poles. So hence the name fish hook, hairpin, or reverse action clasp. And of course, I told you there is one exception to this rule of cast clasps where you end up using an orthodontic wire to fabricate a clasp, and that is known as a combination clasp. This is a very favorite MCQ in many exams. A combination clasp is basically made of wrought retentive wire. Now, an orthodontic wire is made by pulling it into shape rather than melting and pouring metal, right? It is formed by pressing a metal sheet between rollers and drawing it out into a wire. And that process is called as wrought smithing. Now, this wrought wire, is used to form a clasp that forms the retentive terminal of a particular clasp, whereas the reciprocal arm or the one that is present on the lingual side is still going to be a cast clasp. I will fabricate them separately and I can cast it so that the rod component gets incorporated, or I can do welding or soldering procedures to attach this together. So in the end, I have a clasp assembly in which the retentive arm is made up of orthodontic wire and the reciprocal arm is going to be made of cast components. And since it is a combination of two techniques, hence the name combination clasp. The advantage with wrought wire is that it is very soft and flexible. And hence, if I am going to have a periodontally compromised case or a tooth with a very heavy undercut where I'm not able to employ standard cast clasps, I will prefer the use of a combination clasp. Then, of course, you have the other non-circumferential type of clasps. One is the embrasure clasp or the modified grip clasp. The embrasure clasp is nothing but two circlets that are joined together at the wrists and originate one mesial, one distal from an embrasure area. Now, this is usually used in a Kennedy's class 2 situation on the intact side, right? You will prepare two rests. You will give slight relief on the mesial and the buccal and the lingual, and you will have circlet and originating towards the mesial and one originating towards the distal side. And of course, we already saw the onlay rest. In conjunction, you will have a clasp that is known as a on-day clasp. You have also something known as a half and half clasp. It is nothing but, in a pyre abutment, you can have two rests prepared on both mesial and distal. And from the palatal side, one reciprocal arm will come from one rest, and on the buccal side, one retentive arm will come from the other rest. That is all. That's a half and half clasp. Right? And then, of course, you have a special type of clasp called as a grasso or the VRHR clasp. It is like somewhere in between the bar type and the circumferential type of clasps. You have a vertical reciprocal arm and a horizontal retentive arm, meaning the retentive arm is going to look like your standard, circumferential clasp. But unlike the other circumferential clasps where the reciprocal arm was also a curve, it will have a minor conductor that comes up and a small rest-like structure. So it is a vertical reciprocal horizontal retentive, which is what VRHR stands for. So this is just a special type of circumferential clasp. All right. So we have seen a lot of different types of clasps. But what are the factors that will actually affect the amount of retention that is provided by the clasps? Now, of course, what type of clasp you are using plays a major role, right?